the first 2 years, I didn't stay
Okay.
sane. I tried to do it all and be all things,
Yeah.
all people, go to every event, show up, be present.
Mhm.
And when you think of like the size of a division, it's hard to be in
Yeah.
everybody's room multiple times. And then, of course, coming home, cooking dinner, taking care of my kids,
Mm.
it was exhausting. The things that I sacrificed early on until I learned how to have that work life. I don't even call it balance anymore. I call it harmony.
Yeah.
Was time with my family, my free time, weekends, exercise, sleep. The weekends became catch up time because during the
Mhm.
week I was so busy making sure that I was present and doing so many things for other people. The work that I needed to do was not getting done at work.
Yeah.
So I would have to bring that home and it was exhausting. I had to learn how to slow myself down and get my life back.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Hot Conversations with School Leaders. This is Matthew Mason. I'm your host. You know that we do this podcast because we really want to get the voices of great leaders who are and have done the job, and also learn from them how are they able to do that without burning out. So the lady that I have in front of you today is a person who taught me a lot. I've had some open conversations on the podcast and just about growth time in my experience, and that was in Lynchburg City. And it was with this lady here. So this is Dr. Crystal Edwards. She's been a superintendent in 2 divisions. She has led with grace. She has led with strength. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So, Dr. Edwards, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on this podcast.
This is awesome. This is awesome. So, I'm going to jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your education and leadership journey.
Sure, sure. I, as a student in high school, public high school in East Orange, loved chemistry. I had an awesome chemistry teacher, and I was going to be a chemical engineer because that's where the money was, right? Off to Penn State, scholarship, first chemical engineering course that I took, just basic engineering. I thought, oh my God, I do not like this. But I continued taking courses and I just could not see myself doing this work for the rest of my life. So I switched to something that I secretly loved, but at the time did not make any money, and that was teaching. So I started studying to become a chemistry teacher. So that's how I got my foot into education. Funny story, I didn't actually tell my parents that I was changing my major until
Wow. Oh, wow.
way later and, closer to graduation. And they realized, like, oh my goodness, okay, she's going to be a teacher. Came back, I taught in the division that I grew up in, came back to do service there. I actually did not teach chemistry. I taught everything but earth science and biology, but I enjoyed it and eventually moved on to several different divisions where I did get to teach chemistry, which I absolutely love because I think every kid can do chemistry. And then just worked my way up to being a supervisor once I had a child, and she was in elementary school. And I would visit her classrooms and realize that elementary school teachers, some of them, science is not their forte. And I
Gotcha.
wanted to make a difference for my baby, but also the other kids in the class. So I would take my chemistry students and teach in the elementary schools at my daughter's school and then other schools and then summer programs. And I found my way into being a supervisor of science after that, supervisor of science and math when my boss retired, and just continue my learning journey. I enjoyed working with students, but I also enjoyed working with the adults who teach those
Okay.
students. That was a newfound joy for me, and became a director of math and science, an assistant superintendent of all subjects. So we can talk about that later and
Yeah.
challenges that had. And then finally, superintendent, which was the job that I said I am never going to take.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up here.
So I'm glad you said that. So why not? So you just recently, I believe it was last year, I was a part of the Aspiring Superintendents program with Virginia Tech, and you came through and you had a very good presentation that you did for us. I would love for you to kind of share a little bit of that a little bit later because I think that really opened my eyes to the superintendency in some ways. But why not become a superintendent?
Well, when I was the assistant superintendent in New Jersey, that was my dream job. I had curriculum, I had teachers, I worked with students, I enjoyed parents, community, getting grants, but I was number 2, so I really wasn't responsible for everything, and I
Right.
was a good backup, and I enjoyed being in the backup role, and I never wanted to have that main responsibility. And in New Jersey, we had other things such as, bargaining units, which could be contentious at times. And there were legal concerns and just being on television. At that time, our meetings weren't televised, but if there was a news story, you'd be out in front. And quite honestly, that scared me. So
Mm,
I was happy where I was until my boss one day let me know that he was going to retire. We had not expected that. I was like, "We're gonna be a team for life." And he said, basically, I had a choice. I could either apply for the position or take my chances and wait and see, who came in as the superintendent. So we had done so much great work together that I decided, well, I'll try. We'll see.
gotcha. So then, what do you feel like now that you go from number two to number one? What was that like immediate shift? Like, if you could go back and kind of give a play by play, what are some of the things you felt like you learned in that first superintendency?
Yeah, well, right after I was board approved, it was a beautiful celebration, all excited and everything. When I got home, I had that like, what did I do? Like, what did
Right.
I do? The next day at work, it's just you have this feeling of it's me now,
Mhm.
and as a assistant superintendent, I knew all the principals. I was great with relationships and everything, but it was what I didn't know that scared me
Mhm.
because, the roles are very different from what people think. But it was a little challenging at first because it was probably the first time that really stopped being Crystal and
Hmm.
I was the superintendent.
Yeah.
Now, as the assistant as a supervisor, I could walk into a classroom, get on the floor, teach with kids, all the things. Teachers were comfortable. But now, as superintendent, it had different weight to it.
Yeah.
Teachers reacted differently when you came in the room. Parents reacted differently because now you were responsible for every single problem that you had to solve for them. So it was a challenge to get used to having that responsibility and understanding that how do I navigate this world where I don't have all the answers? I have to rely on a team, but people are expecting me to have all the answers and all the time in the world. That was another part of it that was a little challenging.
How do you adjust? Because again, at this point, you're married, you got kids, you are now leading a division, you're the number one. How did you, in some ways, to me, from what I've seen from a superintendent perspective, I think when we were in our program, it's the greatest job or it's the hardest job you ever love. Uh, how do you stay sane, for lack of a better term?
I think the first 2 years I didn't stay
Okay.
sane. I tried to do it all and be all things,
Yeah.
all people, go to every event, show up, be present. Because you always hear teachers say, "A superintendent, that she's never been in my room," or
Hmm.
"She's only been in my room once." And when you think of, like, the size of a division, it's hard to be in everybody's
Yeah.
room multiple times, even as a building principal. But I tried, and then, of course, coming home, cooking dinner, taking care of my kids,
Yeah.
it was exhausting. So the things that I sacrificed early on until I learned how to have that work life, I don't even call it balance anymore, I call it harmony,
Yeah.
was time with my family, my free time, weekends, exercise, sleep. The weekends became catch up time because during the
Mhm.
week I was so busy making sure that I was present and doing so many things for other people that the work that I needed to do was not getting done at work.
Yeah.
So I would have to bring that home and it was exhausting. And you combine that with board meetings that often went late night. And if we were in negotiations, those went overnight.
Yeah.
Sometimes we wouldn't get finished until like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So I
Eesh.
had to learn how to slow myself down and get my life back. There was a downside to that too that I didn't realize, and one of my principals was very helpful in helping me see that, the team tried to match my energy. So as superintendent, when I came in with my super skills and my emails all night long, all weekend long, I have a team that was trying to live up to that as well
Wow.
and match that energy, and that wasn't fair to them.
Yeah.
So, and one of my principals, the veteran principal, I remember I sent her an email. She's an elementary principal. I sent her an email on Halloween. And, principals will talk like, who's going to be the one to
Right.
call her? So she called me and she said, do you know what day it is? And of course, I'm giving her like, it's Thursday. And she's like, it's Halloween. It's Halloween in an elementary school. And you're sending us emails. And I stopped because I had not thought, about here's the business. I hadn't thought about what an elementary principal is doing on Halloween at 1 o'clock in an elementary school. And of course, that's an experience for our children, but it really made me pause. And then she just later just sat me down and said, you need to slow down. And
Mm.
here's what it feels like when we receive an email Friday at 8 p.m. And I said, well, why are you checking your email on Friday at 8 p.m.? And she said, well, why are you sending it? And
Right.
I said, "Well, I wanna get my plate cleared and get everything off my plate." And she says, "And you disrupt our plates when you do
Mm.
that. And even though we have a choice, we don't have to look at it or we can wait until later, but when we see there's an email from you, we're going to read it." And it does, disrupt their weekends. So I was like, "Okay, I need to change because I'm starting to impact the leaders of my building who, these are the people who are keeping the teachers at their A+ game who are keeping the students at their A+ game."
Yeah.
So that caused me to slow down.
Gotcha. So yeah, no, I think that's really cool that there was the open conversation to be able to be had with you, and it speaks to you being able to say, "Hey, let me listen to what they're saying. I get it. My apologies," and shift. And how did that, as you slowed down after that, how did that better make the relationship with your principals more positive?
It was great. It was,
Gotcha.
we had a better mutual relationship
Mm.
where they would tell me what's the best time for them to do this. Or even if they were struggling with something that, might take me 2 or 3 days to do, depending upon the principal, they could do it in one day or they needed a week. And they felt comfortable that they could talk to me about that and we could have those adjustments. But I think one of the biggest changes that I made, and I may have done this to you too, where I'm like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
write you up if you don't take a vacation, right?
Mhm.
So I really started championing my principals and directors and supervisors' time with their families
Yeah.
and making sure that they took a vacation and not just a location change where you take all the work with you, while your family's enjoying it. And then put your away message on when you're at a professional conference and, talk to your staff, just take those emergency messages so that you can actually enjoy the learning experience instead of just trying to do it all. So I think that made it so much better. We had so much respect for one another and it created this atmosphere where we truly had each other's backs, but we also created this climate of like growing and learning and developing together.
So then you're there in New Jersey. You
Mhm.
then leave New Jersey, you come down to Lynchburg, Virginia, and then you take over there. And in the time that I was with you, there's a lot that happened in that time. We had COVID that hit, we had just different shifts, and like it was just a lot going on. What did you take from your first superintendency and bring to Lynchburg? What were some things that worked, and what were some things you were like, yeah, Lynchburg just this is different?
Yeah, yeah. It's again, I probably did it after that board meeting too. Like, what did I do?
Right.
After the Lynchburg board meeting. Fortunately, when I was in Jersey, and this may sound weird, but we did have some tragic things that happened while in my first superintendency in Jersey that gave me experience on handling very difficult things. One of them was right after the Penn State scandal and I
Mhm.
was a Penn
Yeah.
Stater too, so I'm all in. And I think that was my very first year as being superintendent, and I was actually on vacation, so I might have been even I don't know, about 4 or 5 months into being a superintendent when I got the call that one of my students had experienced something similar with one of my staff members.
Mhm.
And that was foreign to me as assistant superintendent. I'm like, okay, now I'm the boss. Here's the thing that scared me the most, and I need to come back, galvanize my team. We're going to have to address this, investigate this, and talk to the parents, talk to the community, and things like that. So that was a very, very challenging time, but I had an excellent, excellent team around me, and we worked together. We worked with the family, we worked with the attorneys. It was a skill set that I had not had as being,
Yeah.
a curriculum director or assistant superintendent. And it also gave me a different way to interact with attorneys. I had been interacting
Mhm.
with them with the union negotiation, but now this was a serious crisis that we had. So I learned a lot about the law and
Mhm.
just, how to, what to say, how to say it, how to do an investigation that holds up merit and, it's and sadly, how to dismiss people where you're doing it in a way that's, just and legal and, in the best interest of the kids, the families, the school division without it being a media circus. So
Mhm.
I did have that and some other safety things that occurred while I was in New Jersey. So when I came to Lynchburg, and we had similar events with attorneys and similar safety issues. At least I had something to draw from. But COVID knocked me on my butt, so that was
Yeah.
something totally new that I had not experienced coming down here. The culture was a little different in Lynchburg,
Yeah.
coming from New Jersey. I came down here, I must have been doing my happy dance because in Jersey, I had to sell my budget, right? The
Mhm.
the citizens voted on the budget every year, so they could vote it down, and then you'd have to go back out and try to rework that. So I spent a lot of time on the road and just kind of visiting different places, communities, selling the budget. So when I was getting a job here and they're like, "Oh, it's an appointed board that you work with the board of supervisors and they do the money." And I was like, they do the money? And the state does the money? You mean I don't have to go out and grovel, grovel, grovel for money in the
Yeah.
same way that, I did in New Jersey and that, that constant thing. So I was so happy about that. Like, again, I don't have to do it. And then having gone through it a couple times in Lynchburg, I was wishing I could do it
Yeah.
myself. I missed it. It was one thing that was very different when you have a board and a city council that make the decisions, and you have to present this budget in December and January before the governor is finished and before the General Assembly is finished. And it felt so foreign to me. Whereas I was working on the other way. This is what my budget is. This is the amount of money I need. I'm gonna advocate exactly for that. That's what I'm gonna go out and hopefully the voters will vote for that as opposed to this interesting way we do the budgeting down here in Virginia. So that was tough.
Yeah.
And standing up in front of city council, yes,
Yeah.
that was tough. I had 9 board members, 7 city council members. I used to say I had 16 bosses,
Yeah.
and often they didn't agree. So that
Yeah.
made it even more difficult.
I think something, 'cause I remember being at a couple of those, and watching. One of the things that I was always impressed with was, and it was especially as you got later in, like, I feel like something that I noticed with you was like, if it didn't necessarily go great the first time, you were gonna fix it. So then now the next time I come to you, I'm gonna be ready. I'm
Yeah.
ready. I know who I've already talked to. I've got everything, straight. And so I was always impressed with that. And I still have the Frisk book as well. Keep that. I actually, my last principalship, I bought my whole team. The Frisk book was like, this is what we're gonna use. And then now I'm in my school right now, I'm like, this is what we're gonna use. For all of our listeners, if a book that will pretty much step by step, have everything straight. If you ever have to do any write ups or, um, dismissal type situations, it's a great book to use because
Hmm.
it just gives you a step by step thing. But I got that from Dr. Edwards, so I appreciate you, for that. So being a superintendent, and I'm gonna get back to COVID. I'm not gonna let COVID go because I think that was where you shined as a leader. Being a leader of leaders as a superintendent and coming from the principal seat, like how do you support your principals, your directors, all of these individuals who are actually leading other people themselves, but then those people are looking to you for resources and guidance. How do you make sure that you are supporting them?
Yeah, yeah. Um, you just have to recognize that each building, each department has its own culture and own flavor, and each leader has their own way of leading and their own strengths and their own areas for growth. So there's no one size fits all. And I used to tell everybody who would jump up from maybe a building to the central office or classroom to a supervisor's position, I'm like, this is like speaking multiple languages. You
Mhm.
are a different person for each building that you go into because you're trying to serve that building leader, and you need to understand what their needs are, how they
Mhm.
communicate, what's successful for them, how do they like feedback. I mean, I have some building principals that are just like, don't just tell me, and others I'm like, okay, I've gotta take a gentle approach to really talking about this. So it just really boils down to really knowing your people and working with them and having that relationship. And it has to go two ways. There's some times where
Sure.
I had to hear some awful stuff to me, or yeah, I don't know how y'all did it. Y'all probably voted. Who's going to tell? And even in Lynchburg, when you were in Lynchburg, there was an elementary group, then the middle group, and then a high school group. And depending upon what was going on, I may hear from one group or all of you at once. But being able to say, somebody talk to me or somebody come to me, or if not me, I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, my administrative assistant is the one, like, you want to get to her, you go through
Yep.
Denise, and you
Yep.
can pretty much get her to calm down or answer a question or something like that. But those things have to be established. Not everybody's like that, and not everyone is as flexible in their leadership. But if
Mm.
if you want good leadership at the buildings, you have to model basically what you expect teachers to do. I mean, we
Yeah.
want them to differentiate. That goes all the way up the chain.
So staying with that, how do you in your, as you are leading, deal with the hard decisions, right? Like again, as I watched you lead, there were plenty of times you just had to make hard decisions and hard calls. And you were open with us about those things. Like you always honest, you share, but and you and I've had this conversation outside of this where it's like I didn't always like all of the things that were said. Now that I've had time to step back and look, it's like, no, Dr. Edwards was right. Like she was right there. And sometimes too, I even wonder, like, man, how much did you make life a little harder for somebody? Because you could have just been like, okay, cool. She gave me my answer. Let's move on. Instead, and I talk about myself all the time. You pout. You get upset. You get frustrated. But you were right. So how do you address that and deal with that yourself when you know you got to give a hard answer? I can't change it. The people I'm talking to may not know all the information that I have, but I
Yeah.
still got to do this. Like, how do you
Yeah.
handle that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I learned early on is just having some sort of a decision-making protocol
Mm,
and I pretty much created this one that I use, just straight out of failure, right? Where
mhm,
things just went totally wrong, totally sideways, where I thought I was being a great communicator and then not, and
mm,
I had to go back and revisit it. So most often I'm in a very collaborative mode, and we're meeting as a team, we're making decisions together. But when it comes to some of those tough ones and those hard ones, especially when I can't share all the information, because I know
mm,
that people wonder, like, where's this coming from and everything. So I did have like a 5-step decision making protocol, and I'll be like, if I have to do a D1, which is it's all me, y'all. I'm gonna have to make this decision. It's not up to you. I may not even have time to consult you, or I just
mhm.
may not consult you just because of the nature of the decision. And some of the things that happened in COVID were like D1 because they were happening so rapidly. Or other times I'll tell my team, like, I need to make a decision. I need your feedback, your input, but this is not a vote. I just need you to inform me so that I'm making a decision with the most accurate information that is available to me at this time. So now's
Yeah.
your time to chime in. I may not go your way, and it may be none of you are saying this and it's just me. that's saying, "No, we're going in an opposite direction," but at least I feel like I've been informed in doing that, and I feel like those 2 decision-making protocols, D1 and D2, are the ones that I had to use the most when it was a tough call. And then you have to, as a leader, anticipate the emotional reaction of the
Mm.
people that you're giving the decision to and not take it personal. And I think a lot of leaders go wrong when they take everything personal. So, even in our group in Lynchburg, I could tell like who's going to be really mad and just start, yep, 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 yep. Who's going to meet me in the parking lot and keep working me over? Who's going to talk behind my back? Who's going to,
Mhm.
all the things. And then it is, as Mel Robbins says in her book, let them, because
Right.
that's a necessary thing for you all to do, principals, directors, supervisors to do without me taking it personal and feeling some kind of way about it. So that's critical. The thing that they don't teach you in superintendent school is how to take care of yourself, right?
Mm.
Because what would happen is, Dr. Edwards made a decision and, all the middle school principals are unhappy.
Mhm.
You all go back to your office, you get on whatever it is now, I don't know, they do WhatsApp or Marco Polo, all the different things, and you all go to town together. I
Mhm.
know that's happening, and I actually am glad that that's happening because you should never do this job alone, that you all are talking to each other. But I can't talk to anybody, right?
Right.
I can't talk to my deputy. I can't talk, you can't go down the chain. I really don't want to call superintendents in neighboring divisions and say, this is what's going on in Lynchburg here and there. And especially since, we're always competing for staff and everything like that. So
Right.
I want to make sure I keep my good people. So I had to figure out, like, how do I handle my own emotions about the decisions that I have to make? Because sometimes I had to make some that I didn't even like, right? I
Mm.
did not want to do this, but the circumstance required it, or it made me angry or it made me sad wherever we were, especially when they were the financial decisions. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, when we were facing budget cuts and having to, reduce staff. No one wants to do that. So those were tough, and I had to deal with, like, how do I take care of myself during those times as well?
So how do you take care of yourself? How did you take care of yourself during that time?
Well, if there was a 5K in Lynchburg, I was running it, let me tell you.
Right.
That's my stress reliever. I'm not very fast. I definitely am not going to win a race, but I do feel like the outside, being outside and running,
Mhm.
that for me is my personal peace, and it helps me stay grounded so that I can make good decisions. I will toss them if I have to really struggle. I will call a close superintendent or a close
Mhm.
mentor and just say, look at this, find the blind spots that I'm missing in this, help me with this, help me deliver this information. What's the best way to do it? You do seek help. And then I just have to let things go. I mean, we
Mhm.
as humans, we can spend so much time on the negative things that will just, bring us down when there's so
Yeah.
much positive that we could also focus on. And this too shall pass as COVID passed, but here we are today.
So now let's go to COVID. Oh, I remember it was like March 11th. I think we were having a PD at EC Glass, and we were right in the middle of it. And all of a sudden, we got wind that it might be. We had to actually get the speaker out because he needed to get on a flight to get back to Colorado before they started shutting down. And then all of
Right.
a sudden, by the time we got back the next week or whatever, it's kind of a blur now. Schools are closed.
Right.
And then we had to go through a year of doing things online. Then we had half the kids come in one day, half to come another day. Then everybody was back, but then we had to have only a certain amount could be in the cafeteria. Like all of this is going on. Like how do you lead in crisis? And this was like 2 to 3 years, just different than what we have ever been.
Yeah, and I didn't even have the fortunate experience to have like 5 years in Lynchburg where I
Right.
had it down pat.
Right.
So that would have been what I came in April of 2018, and then, by April 2020,
Yeah.
schools closed.
So
Just with a little bit of time under my belt and, some turnover on my key staff, I was pretty much sitting there like, "Oh my goodness, this is this is this is something, I have never experienced, uncharted territory. And in the beginning, it was very concerning. COVID was a concerning thing, particularly with the elderly. And we all had this weight of people are dying, right? And
Yeah.
that just scared me. It brought me back to the time where I enjoyed being number two. And there were times where I wish, like, man, I wish somebody else could make this decision. I
Yeah.
really did. I found strength in my school board at the time, and they were struggling too. It was very hard for them, but they were extremely supportive and they wanted to do the right thing. And, I had a school board member who was an infectious disease doctor, and I'm like, thank goodness,
Hmm.
at least, there, but this was all new to him too. But we worked through it together. There were times where I second guessed myself. Am I doing the right thing? And at the speed that we had to proceed,
Hmm.
that was the scary part because it was get up to speed rather quickly. We did not have a virtual program. We weren't even really doing any kind of online direct instruction, although we had one-to-one devices in middle and high school. The one-to-one instruction was not there, and
Hmm.
teaching online is very different than assigning something for students to do online. So that was challenging, and then, of course, once schools were closed by the governor, then we struggled with the PPE, all the stuff. We had to get the building set up, and where I was,
Right.
we were already struggling with leaky roofs and things like that. Now you add COVID to the mix of something else that we had to look out for. So it was very challenging. It required lots of conversation.
Yeah.
I must have done my decisions, oh gosh, 3, 4, 5 times in my head before even coming out with them. And then those moments where I had to stand firm, where people were divided in their, mask or no mask, and all the things. And of course, what the private schools were being able to do versus
Right.
what we were being able to do. And then criticism was,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's so hard. No one wants to turn on the TV and hear bad things about yourself or read about it in the paper or on the Facebook, group or something like that. But that was happening at the time. But I stayed prayerful, and
Mm.
just really asked God to just center me, right? And guide my steps and help me make the best decision that I can right now with the information I have. And, like I said early on, it was all about grandparents and
Mhm.
elderly folks were being affected, and they thought kids were safe. So keep the schools open, kids are safe. But then I
Right.
have veteran teachers and, pregnant teachers and just all the unknown and trying to protect all of the people. And that's where we did the every other day thing
Yep.
and had to come up with a hybrid method of keeping our class sizes small and keeping our staff safe and keeping our kids safe.
So something you brought up multiple times in the interview is you felt like you've had a good team. Like, and you've brought up the word team a lot. When we went through everything, one of the things I thought was, now that I look back on it, just smart, was you divided like all of us as principals or different groups, and we all kind of just took over. Like I think I was part of the social studies group, and so we were pretty much putting together the curriculum and all the different things for social studies. You had people over here doing all the different things. And looking back on it, even though you were shouldering the decisions, I think you did a great job of saying, but I've got people who I don't, as the superintendent, need to create the social studies curriculum. I got a whole group of individuals over here who can do that. And they just report back to the person's over curriculum instruction, and then we can go for it. Like, what made you say to yourself, hey, I don't need to take this on all on myself, and I use the people I have?
Yeah, yeah. Well, with what 8,000 students, there's no way I could take that on, and trying to keep them in the forefront and say, like, they deserve the best we can give them during this season, right? And we had so many talented people, so it was never a thought that I would do it by myself. It was just how to
Hmm.
galvanize the talent, because the thing that mattered the most would be the consistency. we're no longer 11 elementary schools, 3 middle schools with our own flavor and think we are one division now trying to move through this season of COVID, and we needed to make sure that we didn't leave a population of students or a school behind. So we divided the labor. I met with the senior team and then you all and the directors and everybody,
Mhm.
and we mixed it up. You know that
Yeah.
we put people, teachers, we involved everybody to help get us through that time, which you have to trust the people. You have to trust that I knew for sure everybody had a heart for this. Like,
Yeah.
if there's nothing, there's tremendous love in Lynchburg for our babies and our families. So I had that on my side, and I knew that people would do the best that they again, with the resources that we had to make things happen. And we had a fantastic tech team that was just like, we don't know what you need. We'll get you the devices. We'll get you this. We'll get training. We'll do blah. We started Zoom. None of us knew. Like we thought we were the Brady Bunch. I mean, it was just so new, but everyone was so helpful, and we were all forgiving in our understanding of this is new for us, so I don't know how many times
Yeah.
we had to say, "You're muted." Remember when we
Right.
just
Yep.
had to
All the
do
time.
it? And just navigating the homework and how to do things differently, and our support staff were wonderful because
Mhm.
while doing this, we also had, like, the nurses helping out, making calls, and just people stepping up to the plate. We helped out with the vaccines in the clinic and
You
all
had the
kinds of things.
buses,
Right,
the
exactly,
buses,
our
food, and
transportation.
getting yeah.
It was an all-in effort, and I am just so grateful that it was one of those things where I was like, "This is what needs to happen," and I had these champions just step up and say, "Alright, I'll lead this group," and that was it. Like, they were off and running, and you can't ask for more than that. COVID was just terrible just in its effect on our community, the culture, and across the world. But it was also very uniting for us in terms of we got to see the best of our staff,
Mm.
our families, and everyone just come together and do some amazing things during that time.
So you've now retired. You are
Yes.
consulting. You are helping the next generation of leaders. What would feedback would you give anybody who's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting into leadership. I want to lead other people, and specifically in schools." What would be some things you would share with them as they're preparing?
Yeah. As political as education has become, sometimes you just have to block that out. And when you get to the heart of people, because people who do the work that we do, the reward is in the child, right? We see these children grow and develop, and when they come back and they're all adults and they have their own kids and you hear their story and their successes, and you kind of say, I had a little piece of that, right? I had a
Yeah.
little part of that. I didn't give up on that child. So, I always tell people you have to go into this for the right reasons, right? And make sure, because the wrong reasons they'll act up in a heartbeat, but the right reasons will keep you grounded, and keep you moving forward. And we as educators, we are our biggest commercial. And I'm very concerned
Yeah.
that, the number of teachers going into education is dwindling. And,
Yeah.
sometimes you'll hear teachers that'll, I don't tell my kid to be a teacher and that kind of thing. But there's so much joy in it. And yes, it
Yeah.
has its struggles, but our we don't have widgets. Our
Yeah.
kids are worth that struggle. So that would be, my first advice is just making sure that the heart's in the right place
Mhm.
for the work, and that the heart can help you stay grounded during the tough times where, it is a tough job to
Yeah.
do this. But I enjoy the work, and I enjoy working with aspiring leaders at all different levels, because leadership just isn't at, the building level or at the division level. Teachers are the leaders and students are leaders. It's all in the heart for the leadership.
How do you feel like we can do a better job as leaders being that commercial to get people in? Like I have two daughters. Honestly, I believe will be great teachers. Like I do believe they're going to be in education in some way. So I know I have to do a better job of not making the job look like something you don't want to do.
Right. Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do you feel like we can do a better job of that?
Well, we have to be role models for what I would call reasonable work, right? Because these jobs, they will take the 24 hours and more if they could, because
Yeah.
there's just that much. And people see that. People see the burnout, so to speak. People see the ugly side, the nastiness, and some of these social media has, not helped with the people being kind, and it's up to us to show them the other side of it, the joyous side of being in education and working with staff and working with teachers and students and families and that. So as a leader, you have to role model this harmony between your life and your work, which is one of the reasons why, like, I would always say to you guys, okay, when we go on holiday break, during December,
Hmm.
put your away message on, right?
Yeah.
Yes, people know school is closed, so to speak. But when you put your away message on, you're sending the message that, hey, I'm spending time with my family now,
Yeah.
and I'm doing the things but that has to be modeled from the leader top down so
Mm.
that people understand that you value their time, that yes, you should go to your child's soccer game. And
Yeah.
yes, we got to make it work so that you can sneak out for an hour to get to that concert that's at, 10 a.m. in the
Right.
morning. A lot of that I missed for my own children when I was teaching and they were in school just because, it's hard to find a substitute for a chemistry teacher. So didn't miss much. But we have to model that for them and show them that you can have a balanced life, you can have harmony while also doing a very wonderful job as an educator in all different levels.
Gotcha. All right, I'm gonna ask you some quick fire questions. Let's see what your answers are gonna be for those.
Okay.
So, what is the one book that you feel like has impacted you as a leader?
Ooh, that was hard. I was gonna say the first book, but my favorite book is this one, which is the Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank, and
Okay.
How to Prevail, just because that's a book that helped me with the emotional side of dealing with, adults sometimes aren't very kind. So how
Yeah.
do you deal with that as a leader? So I love that book for the strategies in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that book. I've never heard that one. I'm
You
gonna
never
get
I
that.
never I never dunk tanked you and said,
I don't
"Listen,
think
you gotta."
so.
Oh my goodness, I'm surprised you missed that. Well,
Yeah.
you probably didn't experience it as much as some of the others. I was like, this
Yeah.
book is all tabbed up and ripped up from many times where I brought it to work.
I might have to get that. Okay, that's good. Who is somebody you feel like is a mentor for you? I know you might have many, but just one who you're like, yeah, this person has a real impact on my life.
It's interesting because I thought long and hard about this, and I had more than one, but when it boils down to it, the person who I felt like has been a good mentor for me has been my administrative assistant, Denise Spinner. And because she can see my blind sides,
Yeah.
she can forecast things. She was always caring. And she modeled for me because things got hot in the superintendent's office, and Denise was cool as a cucumber. And she problem solved and she helped me like at times where I felt like I was going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And she was there to just kind of navigate that. And she also helped you all, my staff too,
She did.
because she knew when, no, not the time, like she just was the protector of all. But then I realized that's important to have that. And
Yes.
principal, I felt kinda guilty. I was like, "Everybody should have a Denise. Every principal should have a Denise because you have the same kinda days that I have." So, often we think of these big heroes who are like the superintendent, former this and all of that, but actually it's the support staff who do a lot of the mentoring for those of us in these leadership roles because they just help us keep it real and keep it honest, but keep it moving.
Love it. Love it. What's your mantra? What's the thing that you say to yourself? Keep yourself on track.
That's funny, I'm surprised. One of the things I have to say to myself is always is like, "Check your title at the door. Check your title at the door." I say that at our meetings,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
And I have to will myself to be like, "You don't have to be the first person to speak. You don't have to," people are gonna look for that. Like, you
Yeah.
will never develop talent if your mouth is always running, right? If "What do you think about it?" Well, once the superintendent says it, then that's what everybody's gonna pretty much chime in. So I always try to just remind myself to check your title at the door. Let's have a decent discussion here that doesn't have the leveling that gets in the way a lot of times when we need to make good decisions for kids.
Gotcha. Um, what's some mistakes? Like one that you really can look back on that was like, hey, I learned a lot from that.
Um, I would say just when I first became the superintendent and just trying to do it the way that I had seen all of my superintendent bosses do it. And in Jersey, I think at the time that I first became superintendent, that women superintendents might have been 13% of the population with 600 school divisions. So it wasn't very many. So my role models were all men, right? And
Gotcha.
I would always joke because one of my former superintendents would go home, he wouldn't even have a briefcase. And I'd go home like the bag lady,
Yeah.
just everything pulling on it, and it was too much, and then I
Hmm.
just had to come to terms with women can't lead,
Hmm.
even if we wear a pantsuit, but we can't lead the same way that men do, right? We
Yeah.
just there's just some differences in that so that we can be healthy leaders. And then African American women, of course, being a
Yeah.
woman of color, there's a whole different dynamic there. So I think the mistake that I made was trying to approach this superintendency as here's a package that I have to fit into this package as opposed to I am my own package, right? And I have to
Yeah.
discover my own gifts and talents, and I have to work within the gifts and talents I have and let that be my leadership journey. So that took me a minute to get to it, but once I got to it, it was refreshing.
And the last one is what is one leadership moment? And we've talked about a couple of, but one leadership moment that you learned from. So not even a mistake, just something that you can say, hey, learned a lot from that.
This is a very special moment because I've always, as superintendent, spent my career at board meetings where you had the two student reps from the high school and that, they tell about their high school. But when I was in Lynchburg, I got this bright idea that I'm just going to bring in elementary, middle, Fort Hill, we're all coming in, and I even tried to get Lauren. I'm like, I know the kids are incarcerated, but they have something to say, so come on. And I wanted to create this space at our board meetings where our little ones would also come and share moments at the board meeting. I had no idea how this would go or what it would look like. The first couple that we did, oh my goodness, I would be in tears. And thinking about
Wow.
some of them right now, those kids with the opportunity to just come speak to the board and their parents are there and they did, and there were no rules, right, on what you
Hmm.
had to do. So they did all kinds of creative things and spoke from the heart. And I can just remember kids from Fort Hill, which was our alternative program,
Hmm.
coming and speaking about people believing in them and giving them a second chance and how important that was. And then even these itty bitty ones who were like in, goodness gracious, like kindergarten and first grade, doing an amazing presentation of just here's what's happening in my school and why I love my school, why I love my teachers. Things from science. Bedford Hills blew my mind with the Shark Tank. I mean, they came in and they did such a great job of mimicking Shark Tank for the board members. And I think for me, that set the tone of this is the work of the board, right? Listen to these children. This is the atmosphere that we're trying to create. This is what we want. We want them to come and talk to us. We want them to be proud about their school, their learning, their
Hmm.
challenges, their successes, and everything. And we want to give them voice. And that voice starts in like pre K, right? For me, the youngest ones, we can get them there as well. But one very special moment happened probably my last year doing this where the kids from Darrington, there may have been 5 of them that were supposed to speak, but 1 was missing, and we did this at the beginning of the meeting, then we sent the kids home so we could do the business, but this one kid was missing, he wasn't there. Let me take a quick sip. He wasn't there, and I was like, "It's fine. When he shows up," because the principal's like, "He's on his way. He really is." I said, "When he shows up, we'll make space and time for him, right? We'll stop the meeting and we'll let the young man speak." So he came a little bit late. We stopped the meeting. We gave him the podium, and he was standing there by himself. And he was so nervous and scared, right? And he
Yeah.
just you could tell he was happy to be there, but nervous and scared. And out of nowhere, 2 other students just came up and stood side by side next to him, and they were like, "You got this." And when he spoke, like, he just lit up, and, like, his tribe came to
Yeah.
his backing, and he just started speaking and sharing with us, and I see I'm getting teary-eyed right now.
Yeah.
It was so powerful, and I said to the principal, like, "That's true leadership.
Yeah.
That's what we want right there." No one said anything to the kids, they just walked up, stood they didn't say a word, they just
Yeah.
stood beside their classmate, and I'm like, I will never forget that moment, and just
Yeah.
feeling like that was something that, I had a little tiny bit in creating that space, but that was the space that we needed, and I think all boards should make space and do those types of things with kids.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. One more question for you. If you could have anybody on this podcast, who do you think should grace the pod? But it's got to be somebody you can help us with.
Okay, let me think about that. Anybody on the podcast? I would say, man, I got so many good folks in my head. Some of my champions. Is it just superintendents that you're looking for, or is
It could
it
be anybody. Anybody you feel
anybody?
like will be good.
My goodness. One of my favorite superintendents is Royal Gurley in Charlottesville.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He has such a heart for kids, and particularly underprivileged kids, and he just goes hard with it and has a no I'm not gonna fail type of, attitude, and I think
Yeah.
he would be good in terms of doing that. Dr. Coleman, who was my board chair, another one who he's just fantastic person to work with, who again goes hard for children. But I would really like to get some of the unsung heroes that are some of the people who you might not think you may, because you've worked in the division with me, but, like, I'm just thinking about Greta Ford, right? Or
Mm,
the custodian at EC Glass, just the power of her relationships with kids, and
yeah.
why that's important, and why it's important for me to recognize that
Yeah.
that exists, and to really give that respect that says there are so many people in our buildings, like so many fantastic bus drivers who, had it not been for the bus driver, that kid would have
Mm,
come to school differently like that. So I try to, not only think of the people who are in a formal leadership position, but the people who are actually leading with no real leadership titles whatsoever. So I know I gave you more than
that's
this,
great.
which
This
is
is great. I like
awesome.
all those names.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
where can the listeners find you or follow you?
I'm on the Facebook and X and Instagram and LinkedIn. I also have my own consulting website at crystaleducationalconsulting.com. You can find me there. Just type in my name, I'll probably pop up on something. I'm trying to share what I've learned now that I have a little bit of free time with, being retired, just little nuggets that I've picked up over the years of being in education, 38 years now of being in education, and just sharing those with people, because I think that as a community, we need to share more of what works and support one another. And this is cool too.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. This is great. So look, everybody, Dr. Edwards, thank you for this time. This was awesome. Everybody, remember this is Hot Conversations with School Leaders. Remember, if you can share, comment, do all the things, get this out there. For nothing more, just to let people know that there are people out there doing the work, working very hard, and there are voices out there who are more than willing to help you as you lead your schools, divisions, and everywhere that you're at. Love you. Hope you have an incredible day. Keep leading.